Actually, Steve and I are going to ham and egg this the way we usually do, and she's going to come on up whenever I do my little spill here. But I just had the opportunity to be in Boston for my son's graduation. After 2 years in the Navy, he went to MIT and he just got his MBA, so I was really proud of him. But before we went there, we went to DC, and the highlight of my trip was a cocktail at the Trump Hotel. It was pretty cool. It's a beautiful hotel, by the way. So I do appreciate the opportunity, Barry, and for the executive committee here to let us speak about yes on 443. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about Stand for Prescott and what that is, because you're seeing signs probably now everywhere that says yes 443, standforprescott.com. Stand for Prescott is a citizens grassroots group. This group formed actually in anticipation of this being referred to the ballot. So it's been working for many months, meeting several times weekly. We have the two co-chairs with us today, Cecilia Jernigan and Sherry Hanna. Many of you know Linda Nichols. She's our secretary. She's president of Republican Women in Prescott. So we meet and we work, and I will tell you we've gotten such great support from the city of Prescott. We have civic leaders such as Sheila Polk, Senator Pham, Senator Pierce, former Secretary of State Ken Bennett. We have groups, large groups, that have stepped forward and say, we need to support this and get this done for our city. We have the Prescott Area Realtors, thank you Liz, PAR, and they have written a letter of support. We also have Friends of the Library. Just thousands of people that have stepped forward and said that we need to get this done for the city of Prescott, and I just wanted to acknowledge their efforts. We have builders, Mike Pham, just many people out there that realize the necessity of passing this proposition for our city, so that we have one common goal, and that common goal is to protect Prescott and to also live up to our constitutional obligation with PSPRS. So I'm going to have Steve start us off with the first slide.
It's great to see you all out there. Just for my reference, how many of you actually live in the city of Prescott? That's a great crowd. So welcome. And Billy and I are going to make this quick. We want to get to Q&A. And so, what's our problem? Our problem is PSPRS, as if you didn't know. Currently, what we know we owe is $78.4 million. The annual payment necessary to pay this down currently with our normal payment and our unfunded payment combined is $6.3 million. That's 20% of the general fund. Next year, those two combined, the normal payment plus the unfunded payment, will be $7.8 million, 22% of the general fund. And if we go totally out with what the state has offered us for 20 years, a 20-year payment, it would be, in 20 years, it would be over $14.7 million of what currently is about a $31 million general fund. So, Billy?
Thank you, Steve. So how did we get here? Very interesting. I ran into a person the other day that really didn't know anything about PSPRS. I was kind of surprised. So very quickly, we are obligated in our Constitution. We are obligated statutorily to be a member in PSPRS. 1968, the system was set up by the state legislature for fire and police employees. We are responsible as a city for funding this pension for our employees. Make no doubt about it. This unfunded liability will be paid, one way or the other. It's how we do it, how soon we can do it, and the sooner we can do it, the less we will have to pay. There have been great reforms that have been done. Is it enough? No. But however, I will tell you, last year we all worked hard to pass Proposition 124. Proposition 124 brought some much needed reform to the system. I know Senator Fan worked hard on that. I know Noel Campbell also worked very hard on this. Prop 124 and other reforms that have been put forth in the legislature have done a couple of things that have really made the system more sustainable. One is the drop program is gone. I think the one that's going to make the biggest difference is doing away with the permanent benefit increase, the PBI, which was at one time 4%. That has now been capped to 2% and is tied to CPI, so that there's no increase. Then there would be no COLA that would be given. It's also increased the employee contribution, so it does stabilize the system going forward. Is it enough? No. Do we need to do more? Absolutely. Sorry. My watch was calling me, sorry. So we do need to do more, and we'll work on that. However, I can tell you, 124 helped the system substantially. And so that's how we're here. We're in this situation. As I said, we will pay this bill one way or the other. So it's how we get it done and what happens in the meantime. Steve.
Thanks, Billy. Folks, these are quality of life issues. The debt is forcing us to reduce public safety and quality of life services like the library, our living room, Prescott's living room, Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec has a heck of a return on investment. When we put money in Parks and Rec, it returns many, many times what we put into it. And police and fire. You know, I was talking to a detective, and detectives are a lot higher priced than a normal patrolman. And he was saying that he had worked 49 hours the previous month in overtime. And he was out in the patrol car. So it sounds great. It sounds like we're putting our people to work. But also 49 hours of overtime really, really stresses our people. I was talking to Chief Black. She said that through April, the FY17 budget was $90,000 over for overtime, over the budget, because of the people that they have not had out on the street. And Billy, you're on.
So Steve and I were part of a committee that Mayor Oberg set up to look at how it is that we tackle our strategic plan for the city. And all of the issues that we want to move forward for in our city, whether it's airport, economic development, we came to realize that everything depends on our taking care of this issue for Prescott. Everything depends on the general fund taking care of this issue before us today. So we came forward with several recommendations which the council approved. There were several where we put some property that we're not using is on the market now. We're working on that. Our new city manager, Michael Lamar, has done some restructure, and actually we have saved $600,000 this year on not doing away with department heads, but I would say we reorganized some departments. And so there have been a lot of things that we've done at the city, but all of those simply nibble around the edge of this problem. We need a dedicated revenue source in order to pay down this unfunded liability. Because no matter what we do, I know Representative Campbell and Representative Stringer and Senator Fan are all committed to doing what we can to bring more reform to the system. We will be right there behind them, working as hard as we can to help with that any way we can. We will work with the League of Cities and Towns. That's absolutely essential. And also, whatever we can do to get the governor also on board with, let's continue to reform this system. But what do we need to do as citizens? We need to stand for Prescott. We need to vote yes on 443. This is imperative for our city. When we talk about the problem of Prescott and losing our library, closing our parks, these are issues when you take almost half, 40% of your general fund to service a debt. That is pretty devastating to this city. So, Steve, you're up.
Thanks, Billy. So I'm going to read to you what, it's not up here, but I'm going to read to you the proposition so you can be totally clear on what's in it. It shall the city of Prescott adopt a transaction privilege tax of 0.75%, that's 0.75 of a penny, the revenue from which shall be dedicated to the payment of the city's unfunded liability to the public safety personnel retirement system, taking effect on January 1st, 2018, and ending the earlier of December 31st, 2027, or at such time as the city's PSPRS unfunded liability is 1.5 million or less, as determined by actuarial value. So let's take a look at the three things that we need to really pay attention to. It's going to be dedicated, only paying down the unfunded liability, and it will sunset, no matter what, on December 31st, 2027. And as the picture says, this is a small amount to make a big, huge difference. If you buy a cup of coffee that for $3, that's now $3, if you pass 443, it'll be $3.02.
Thank you, Steve. And that is 75 cents on $100. I really like this chart because this chart really, I believe, tells the story about Prescott and comparing us to the other communities in our area as far as tax rates. If you look at the orange bar, I think that's the one that's so critical for us to look at, especially those of you who raised your hand because you live in the city of Prescott. I live in the city of Prescott. That orange bar is our property tax. The lowest, look how low that property tax is. Some people said, why don't you raise the property tax rather than do a sales tax? Well, I, for one, would prefer a sales tax, and we'll show you why pretty soon, because the sales tax is really distributed more fairly rather than just having this all depend on the 23,000 households in Prescott. Our property tax is extremely low. The legislature has capped that property tax. We may not raise it more than 2% a year. That 2% last year was $65,000 for the entire city of Prescott. Let's look at the sales tax now. You will see the first bar is Prescott. The green is the 2 cents that we get in the city of Prescott for sales tax. 1 cent the voters voted on for the roads. The other 1 cent is for our general fund. When 443 passes, that will be an additional 3/4 of a cent. We will remain the lowest sales tax in the area. We will be lower than Prescott Valley. We will be lower than Chino Valley. And of course, you know for sure that we are lower in property tax than all of those. Steve.
Thanks, Billy. A transaction privilege tax, sales tax, would absolutely be the most fair way to deal with this situation. Prescott contracted with a company called Buxton, which gets into Visa MasterCard receipts. And they took a look at zip codes. And it was very, very surprising because I've heard, well, maybe 15 to 20% is from out of the area, either tourists or people coming in from Williamson Valley or Prescott Valley. No, it's 61% of that sales tax is going to be paid for by people coming in from outside of the city limits of Prescott. 45% from tourists, 16% from non-residents. Prescott citizens only pay 39% of the bill. However, you may be saying, well, that's not fair to the non-citizens of Prescott. None of these services are refused to non-citizens. The police don't say, do you live in the city limits, before they come out and help you. Fire doesn't say that either. Is that right, Scott? Our Parks and Rec don't say you have to live in the city of Prescott in order to appreciate all of the finer things of Prescott. And certainly our library doesn't say that. So 61% is being paid for by residents of other communities or tourists. Billy?
Thank you, Steve. I really like this chart. This chart says basically, you know, there for a while everybody was saying, well, let's just wait. Let's just wait. Let's just wait and see what the legislature might do. And as we've heard from Representative Campbell, that the legislature, this is not on their radar. You know, we've waited too long. I've even heard Chris Kuknio say at the podium at the city council one day, I wish we'd been able to take care of this when I was on council. So now we're wanting to take care of this. The time is now. What happens when you wait? The longer we wait, the more we as taxpayers will pay. We've been given 20 years to pay this down. By the 20 years to pay it down. If we pay this down, if we take the 20 years to pay this down, we will not only be paying down our 78, which is probably going to 82 million, to that we will be adding another $53 million, at least. The legislature this year gave cities and municipalities the opportunity, if they chose to pay this down in 30 years, thus lessening the amount of payment that you have to pay. If Prescott chose to do that, that would be an additional $74 million that this is going to cost the citizens of Prescott. Thus, that total amount would be $127 million. We say, why wait? For 75 cents on $100, 3/4 of a penny, the time is now for the citizens of Prescott to live up to their obligation. Let's continue to work on reform, but let's take care of this problem. And let me say, we may pay another $53 million on top of our 78.4. In the process of that, this city will be devastated by the amenities that we will be losing with our parks, our recreations, our trails, the reasons that tourists come to this town. That 61%, that will go down if we do not have a city that does encourage people to come. So we thank you for your time. Steve, final comments?
I get the easiest slide. You guys are on.
Okay, now I'd like to introduce the guys that oppose 443. And we have Chris Kuknio and John Lemerson.
You know, just to address, I wish we could have solved it when I was on council. What we did was we went out, when I was on council, we went out for a tax as well. The voters said they had a choice. Are we going to be taxed or should the city start cutting? The voters said we don't want to be taxed, and indeed we started cutting. So there was action taken, and I remember the first year I was on council, I looked at our budget, and it showed a $2 million increase in ongoing additional unfunded liability. And I said, this is a problem, you guys, this is a red flag. This is telling us we got to work on this $30 million budget. We just lost $2 million ongoing forever. And there was really no support to go further on that because it wasn't at a crisis level. The last year I was there, it got to be a crisis level. We had to start cutting. We had to start making changes. And that's when we started making the difference to get us through and live within the means that we got. I'm not quite as sophisticated as the Yes for 443 crew. I have these professionally made by me little charts I'm going to show you. So there's two issues going on with this whole problem, and they're getting a little confused sometimes. Number one, we have The general fund, which is in trouble, and it is in trouble. It has been getting in trouble. It gets worse and worse every year. But we also have another problem, which is unfunded liability. And I think we got to be really clear and understand this before we can see how to move forward and change it. We have to pay an ARC. That's the annual required contribution. That's what PSPRS sends us as a bill. That is our bill from the public safety personnel system. This year it was 6.43. Next year it's going to be 7.8. And just to let you know how much this has creeped up, in 2010 our payment was 2.91. Now this entire ARC that we have to pay every year that goes up and up and up and up comes out of the general fund. This is why the general fund is in trouble. It keeps rising. And there's two parts that make up the ARC, which I think people didn't understand before. There's about 1.5 to $2 million of what they call normal cost. So of this, $1.5 to $2 million is normal cost. The rest of it is unfunded liability. So we're already paying unfunded liability out of this number here. And if you look at what they had on their slide and what they said, there were two different things. The slide said pay down the unfunded liability, and what the actual ballot language says, which is important, is it is to pay the unfunded liability. You could pay this out of this with that tax money. And I said this once at Yavapai College, and I had a whole group say, no, that's not true, you're not saying what's right. It is right. They can take that tax money to pay some of this. And that's what makes it worthwhile to pursue a tax, because it takes the unfunded liability off the general fund and puts it in the special tax. So let's go to the next one, right here. One page. You know, I gotta give you one of these PowerPoint things. This would be much, much easier. All right, so that's your ARC. Now we have the other side of this coin, the other part of the problem, the unfunded liability, which sits at 7.8 million, and it's growing. It grew last year by $7.8 million. So, you guys are saying, I thought you said the unfunded liability was coming out of the ARC. What is this? This is what's growing and growing and growing every year, even though we're paying unfunded liability out of the ARC as well. And the reason they don't stick that 7.8 million new unfunded liability that we got last year into the ARC is because we would destroy the general fund right now. Prescott doesn't have $7.8 million to throw into that, to absorb that. All right, so here's what's being proposed. We have an ARC of 6.43. We have unfunded liability of 78 million, and they're proposing a $10 million tax. Now, I say 10 million because it's in the middle. The projection that we got was 9 to 11, so I just picked a number in the middle. 6.43 ARC, 78 million unfunded, $10 million tax. So this is what you're going to see happen. 4.43 of that tax is going to go into pay on the ARC, because 2 million of it is normal cost. Where 6.43 was the total cost here. So 4.43 million goes to pay the ARC, and 4.43 million goes back into the general fund where they can spend it on what they want. Now, we have had a letter written by a potential next mayor that says they'd like to use that money for economic development, for making the rodeo grounds into a great place, to hire more police and firemen, to give raises out. They haven't even gotten the money, and they're already talking about some of these changes to the account. So 4.4 million goes in there. That leaves you 5.57 million to go towards your 78 million of unfunded liability. But the problem is, if we had this tax this year, here's what we find. We'd send this money here, this money there, and they added 7.8 million to our unfunded liability. So here, we're sending 5.5 million to the unfunded, they're adding 7.8. That's not going to work out, is it? It's not going to last very long at all. So but you know, Vanna White is much better than you, Emerson. All right, so you're sending all this money down to the PSPRS board, okay? You the taxpayers, get all this money from the state, they collect what the PSPRS tells you to do, you send the money to them. They have an investment board that their board sends to an investment board who figures out what to do with the money, and then they send it out to a whole bunch of outside investment professionals. So your money goes from here to the board, to the investment board, into these outside investment professionals. These guys that really know what they're doing. And you know what? We pay for these guys that really know what they're doing. Last year, these guys right here charged us $129 million for their services, for costs and fees. $129 million. So what was our return on investment that we got from these guys? $49 million. Does anybody think that's a good deal? So they charged $129 million to invest, and they got us back $49 million. Last year, the fund paid out $826 million in benefits, and they only took in $768 million in contributions from the cities and towns. You can look at this and say, you know what, that ain't the right way to go. Who would do this on their own personal stuff? I gave you $129 million, you gave me back $49, and by the way, I didn't have enough money to pay the pensioners. It went down. And what does that mean? More unfunded liability that goes to your account. And I'm going to go over this kind of slow so you can kind of see what's happening. I'm going to read it. It's going to be boring, but you'll get the picture. This is the history of the fund and what we've been doing in Prescott from 2010 to 2016. In 2010, the fund had a return of 13.47. That's pretty good, right? That's a good return. Our ARC was at 2.91 million, but we had more unfunded liability of 3.2 million with a 13% return. 2011, they made over 17% on their return. Our ARC was at 2.87, and we added 6.5 of new unfunded liability. So we're paying them unfunded liability and costs in this, and they're adding more unfunded liability on top of that. 2012, they didn't have a very good year. They lost 0.79%. The ARC went up to 3.28 million, and they added new unfunded liability of 7 million. 2013, they made 10.5%. The ARC went up again to 3.73 million, and they added 7 million unfunded liability. 2014, they made 13.28%. Our ARC went up to 4.07 million, and they added 13 million unfunded liability to the city of Prescott. 2015, they made 3.68. Our ARC now jumps over $2 million. Now the general fund is getting stretched. And this is the problem that the city of Prescott is seeing, because now you got to come up with these huge chunks of more money. 6.4 million was the ARC, and they still added 4.4 million on top of that. Which brings us to last year. The fund paying all these guys, these experts in the field, these really stellar, brilliant men and women, they made 0.63% return on the money. The ARC went up to 6.43 million, and they added $7.8 million of new unfunded liability. 6.43 plus 7.8, 14.23. How much are we bringing in on the tax? 10? Does somebody see a problem with these things? Let's go to the last one. Does this tax fix the problem with the general fund? Well, kinda, for a little while. It ain't gonna last long. Some people will say, well, this is something to get us by, to get us going until we get the state to take some kind of action. Well, it ain't gonna be very long. It's gonna be a little while because it's just screaming out of control. Does this tax fix our unfunded liability problem? No. Does this tax secure future pensions for our police and fire guys? No. You know, we're supposed to, when you see the projections, they're saying we're going to get it paid off within 10 years. I'm not seeing that happens. And you know what? I feel it's disingenuous to our police and fire to say that we're taking care of the problem. Maybe we're taking care of the general fund with Prescott for a little while, but long term this ain't going to work. And the term that it is going to take care of things and make us feel warm and fuzzy is short. And you know, when it comes to this system, we saw it coming. We saw it grow every year. Like I told you, the first year I saw it jump $2 million. This was no surprise to us. Well, why aren't we fixing it? Why aren't we doing it? Because until it's at a crisis level, I don't have to deal with it. It'll last till I'm out of office. And then the next sucker is going to have to deal with this. So, no, you know what? I don't need applause because this is dire. And you know, they keep talking about, I live in the city of Prescott. I don't live in the city of Prescott anymore. About 2 years ago, me and my wife built a dream house in Williamson Valley. But I lived in Prescott from 78. Thank you, Greg Brown, my representative. But I lived in Prescott from 1978 until a couple years ago. This is my home. I still have properties inside. I'm still going to be allowed to pay the tax on this when I come shopping at Fry's. This is my community, this is my town. If you want to start talking about little borderlines and who lives there, Prescott's our home. We're going to be paying on it. I gave 4 years of my life to this town where I did nothing else when I should have been hauling garbage. And I like hauling garbage. So anyways, you guys, that's all I got. We have more, I guess we're going to do questions and answers, so that's up next. Thank you for your time.
Okay. No. We're going to have question and answer, and these folks can ask you whatever you like, and I'm sure you'll get asked what you want to rebut. So the best thing to do is just to relax, and I'll pass the microphone around, and whoever's got the first question.
Okay, Chris, when we were on the Citizens Tax Committee, and this came up before, it was a 0.55%. I was the only one on the council who said we should pay it. Everybody else said no, we gotta make the legislature sit up and take notice. My argument back was, they don't care. Well, we turned it down, the legislature didn't care. You went through and you showed us how this is badly structured and badly run, and it's abysmal. You are absolutely correct. But the bottom line, when you come down to it, is this is an amount of money that we constitutionally and statutorily have to pay. We cannot escape it. If we let it go, it's going to get bigger and get even worse. How do you anticipate handling all that?
You know, we talk about that there's been reforms going on, and we need to force the state into doing reforms. They show how PBI went away. PBI was permanent benefit increase. They gave these guys money almost every year except the last 2 years of it. And the last 10 years of it, it averaged $1,540 a year. Well, we got rid of PBI because it was bad, right? Well, the fund was kind of broke to do it. But instead, we introduced a 2% max COLA. Well, if you get $60,000 retirement a year, and you get a 2% COLA, that's $1,200. So okay, we had reform that took it from $1,540 to $1,200. Is that real reform? We got to really move into the nuts and bolts, and people way smarter than me. I don't pretend to know the answers to this, but there should be people out there that can give us the answers. Maybe some of those people that gave us, or that we spent $124 million on for their advice, maybe those smart guys can figure out how to get us out of this hole. And you know, the return that we get from PSPRS over the last 10 years has been 4.5%. They projected 7.5 and higher. So what happens when you don't make that? That's new unfunded liability. It keeps coming like that. There needs to be real projections where it comes down and you can say, okay, we're gonna make 4%. Well, then you'd be in good shape. I always project low. This is gonna keep growing and growing and growing. And we have to pay it. We're obligated to pay it. And I think we should pay it. We owe these guys a pension. But the guys in charge of taking care of this money aren't doing it. They're not taking care of this money. They're not doing it right.
Thank you. Thanks for the question, Chuck. Are your eyes glazed over yet? My father-in-law, John Olson, who recently died, was an old rancher boy who happened to make good in some political circles. He was a county supervisor and really was the driving force behind getting Embry-Riddle here to Prescott. And he used to have an old saying that we can't never did anything. And I'll tell you what, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem, guys. Chris, you didn't answer the question. He said, what kind of solution do you have? And you went into pension envy, and you went into all sorts of things that weren't the answer to the question. We, Stand for Prescott, Yes on 443, are answering the question. So, who are you going to believe?
You know, one of the things I'd like to say is that this whole system could blow up tomorrow. Yes, PRS could be gone tomorrow. A whole new system come in place. We still owe this debt. And the longer we take to, I know it's not really a debt, it's unfunded liability, but in my head, common sense, if it's something you're obligated to pay, you owe it. We owe this, and we're going to have to pay it. So do we pay, Silly, can you go back one slide? Do we pay now? This tax is going to generate $10 to $11 million a year. If you've been following our budget meetings, this council is committed to adding, right now, the other 7.8 million also to the 11 million. Now, you can't tell me that that is not going to make a difference, Chris, on paying down this unfunded liability. I mean, that is common core math, if you believe that it won't make a difference, because it will make a difference. Look at this. Doing nothing is going to cost the citizens of Prescott $127 million if we do 30 years, and 53 plus 82 that we owe now. So you do it, pay now, or you pay a hell of a lot more later. So we're ready to get this going. Let's pass this. Let's get it going. Let's pay down this unfunded liability. We believe it can. I want to say one more thing, Chris. Everybody that's in this area, whether it's Williamson Valley, whether it's Chino Valley, whether it's Prescott Valley, we all are a part of the Prescott community. Absolutely. And I will tell you, I have so many people that live in Williamson Valley that said to me, Billy, I wish we could vote yes on 443, because they know that if the property values go down in this city, the property values will go down in Williamson Valley. If we lose our quality of life in Prescott, your quality of life all over this region will suffer.
Okay, we got another question back there.
Yeah, this is a question for Steve. Steve, you cited a chart, I believe numbers stating that the city of Prescott will pay down this unfunded liability in 10 years or sooner?
That's what the proposition says, yes.
No, you have a chart, I believe, in numbers that not on the slide. I believe that the last form, you have numbers saying that you believe the unfunded liability could be paid down in 10 years or sooner.
Yes, I do, as a matter of fact.
I'm wondering how you believe that could be paid down, and if you're going to cite Mark Woodfill's numbers, I'd like the opportunity to rebut that.
Well, I am going to cite Mark Woodfill's numbers, and I'm not sure how you're going to rebut it. Mark was referred to at one point by one of the folks who are here as the smartest person in city government. So let's take the word of the smartest person in city government and just see what it says. That's not a compliment, right, John? So let's take a look at this. Over the next 10 years, the city, through this sales tax, will have paid off $122,757,322. You know what, folks? Let's just for grin say what they're saying. You'll never pay it off. I got to tell you, $122,757,322 is a hell of a lot better than nothing. Just think of where we'll be if we wait for the fairy godmother of the state to save us. So, Mary Beth, rebut.
Thank you. Okay, number one, Mark Woodfield is not an actuary. And I heard yes for 443 people saying that these were actuary numbers.
Are you an actuary?
No, I'm answering your thing. So Mark Woodfield is not an actuary. You have to run algorithms to get a chart like that. So number one, I think it's a disservice to the community to say that you have actuary numbers showing that this liability will be paid off in 10 years or sooner. Number two, that chart shows that Prescott's contribution rate does not increase for the next 10 years. Now, we don't have to check our common sense at the door. Prescott's contribution
Which
rate,
contribution, Mary Beth?
Prescott's contribution rate to PSPRS. That
This chart
shows
doesn't have a thing to do with contribution rates to PSPRS. This is just what we're paying, that's all. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. I did see that chart. It shows Prescott's contribution rate as flat for the next 10 years. Our contribution rate increased over 1,380% in the last 14 years. Now, why that chart shows, if we pass the tax, our contribution rate never increases, that's beyond nuts to me. Number three, that chart shows, as Chris was saying, we have a pension liability portion and a normal cost portion of our bill every year. Mark Whitfield all of a sudden is subtracting this pension liability portion from our liability. That has never dropped our liability in the last 14 years. But now, all of a sudden, he is using this liability and reducing our pension. When we pay our bill every year, it's never reduced it. That's why our liability has been going up exponentially. Number four, that chart also shows a straight dollar for dollar reduction when you put a dollar in. It doesn't work that way. With the compounding of interest, with not making your expected rate of return, and with your contribution rate having to go up when you drop your expected rate of return, which is going to happen, your bill's going up every year. And finally, and I believe this is the most important, I do not believe Mark Woodfield will put his professional reputation on the line, look our treasurer, Jeff DeWitt, in the face, in his eyes, and hand him that piece of paper and say, this is true. This is what's going to happen if we pass this tax. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, I would like to say that, to me, is doing nothing. And the opposition has no solution. That, to me, is nuts. Doing nothing. They have no solution to our unfunded liability. One of the things I'd like to say also on the unfunded liability, one of the problems this keeps going up is that we only have been paying the minimum required. The compounding on that is tremendous. Just like paying your minimum on your credit card. You pay the minimum, it's going to keep increasing. That's what's happening here. We need to pay more than the minimum. One more time, 0.75% is going to raise $10 to $11 million. You combine that with everything that we can give it from a city council. This city council in the budget meetings has said they would like to commit another $7.8 million to this next year. That is $19 million, for heaven's sakes. Don't tell me this isn't going to make a difference on this unfunded liability. It will. And we need to continue. We need to get this down to where it's manageable. We can get this down to where it's manageable, which is around $1.5–2 million. And then don't put anybody on the city council ever again that will not pay attention to this and make sure this does not get out of control again. I believe that that is critical, and I will tell you, this city council, some people have said, well, why don't you as a council commit all of it from now? We cannot tie the hands of other councils going forward. But I will tell you, the two of us, Jim and Emerson, we are committed to making sure that every single time that we can, we'll go toward this unfunded liability, because this is killing our city.
You know, me and Steve just talked about this the other day at Yavapai College. And when this came up, kind of what Billy's saying is, you know, we're committed to spending $7.8 million out of the general fund on this next year. I asked Steve about that. I said, so what you're telling me is you are going to continue to pay the ARC, which is unfunded liability and normal costs. You're going to continue to pay that out of the general fund, and then you're going to pay that $10 million of tax on the unfunded liability. Can you start chipping away at it if you do that? Absolutely. Absolutely. But then he's quoted in the newspaper the next day, and I was misquoted too, so we'll have to check out if this is right. But he says, no, we can pay the $1.5 million, $2 million out of the general fund, and we can handle that. The rest would be paid for by the tax. Is that true or not true? Just
Wait a minute. So say that.
so when I asked you to commit, will the city of Prescott continue to pay the ARC, the entire ARC, out of the general fund, and spend $10 million of your tax money that you're expected to get in on the unfunded liability? And from what people were talking, that didn't sound like it to me. It sounded like you're planning on spending it on other things because the general fund is failing. Sure.
Let me kind of answer that.
The council has already decided before any of these meetings happen, and this is from Michael Marr, says for fiscal year 2018, this council has already decided, in principle, to send all $7.76 million allocated from the general fund to PSBRS. And the citizenry expecting similar fiscally prudent decisions are made by future councils, which we can't commit future councils. We are going to work hard to get this thing down as soon as possible. Yes or no question? I would say it's real tough to answer. It's real tough to answer. What I'm saying to you, okay, yes.
How's that?
Which is really funny because they had a council meeting when talking about the ballot language, and they did not want to commit 0.25 of what they're spending now going into that. So ballot language could have handled that. Ballot language could have tied the hands of future councils to make sure it was done right. But this is a statewide issue, guys. And even if the good ferry comes down that you guys were referring to and wipes out Prescott's liability, boom, it's gone. The citizens of Prescott still are on the hook. Yavapai County Sheriff is unfunded to the tune of $33 million. They're only 41.75% funded. You're on the hook for that, Mr. and Mrs. Prescott. Arizona Fish and Game, we owe them $83 million. DPS, $735 million. You owe money to the Arizona Park Rangers. Central Arizona Fire and Medical, $33 million unfunded. They're only 51.8% funded. But don't feel bad, you guys. Phoenix Fire is unfunded to the tune of $853 million, and Phoenix Police is unfunded to the tune of $1.7 billion. It's bad statewide. We need a statewide fix to fix this. We can't just keep feeding money into this broken system. We trust these guys at PSPRS, and we've had it to where they've... Hi. You know, John Lamerson wanted to say something too, so I'm going to pass that off to him.
The yes side banged us on, we don't have a solution. But when we come back to them on how they're going to manage the money, they don't have an answer. So there may not be an answer for them. But if you can't write it down and put it in contract language or ballot language, then you will not get what you're expecting in the general public.
And we gotta watch out for unintended consequences of this tax too. What about low-income citizens of Prescott? How many of these other government entities that I named are gonna raise taxes on top of that? Fixed income people, you know, it's tough, it's tight. They talk about the cup of coffee that instead of $3, it's gonna cost $3.02. Well, maybe that's true, but what about Bob Bean out at Affinity RV? With those $100,000, $300,000 RVs. He still has to compete with the Valley. You know, we're raising his price on there. 8.05 in Mesa, 6.7 in Santan Valley, 6.3% sales tax in Sun City. We're gonna have 9.1. Would anybody drive down to Phoenix to save anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 on their RV purchase? Are we gonna put him out of business? Retail in the next 10 years. How many people 10 years ago bought things regularly online? How many people do that today? And do you think that's gonna go up or down? We're relying on sales tax to fix this problem while retail plummets. Unintended consequences. You gotta look in the future. You can't look to tomorrow. And you know what? From what I showed you, we don't even think this is gonna go down. It's gonna give us a short, little breath of air. But we're hearing that it'll be paid off in 10 years. We're gonna save all this money by paying it off. Don't think it's gonna happen.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, would you put the previous slide up? I'd like to draw attention to the claims 61%, no previous. Yeah, thank you very much. Those numbers, I would suggest you really have to take it with a grain of salt. Remember last time around, when they were going for the 5.5 increase, the word was, oh yeah, 30-40% paid by out-of-towners. Leave the morality to that aside. And then they said, because it was challenged, they went and got a study at U of A or U of A one, and it came out to what? What was that number? No. Last time you came down from 30 or 40 down to 15%. Now, what's the big sales tax generator in retail sales? Big tax items, automobiles, RVs, not lunches. Who drives from Phoenix to Prescott to buy an RV? Nobody. So I would suggest to you that's not a provable number, and it's probably, I believe, overstated by at least 100%.
Well, actually, John, you're wrong. This is Buxton. It's proven. We have the data. It's one of the reasons we did that study, and one of the reasons we contracted with them, because we wanted to know. We know 61% of the sales tax revenue that we received comes from people that live outside of the city limits of Prescott. 45% from tourism. You let your city go downhill, you will watch, you will see that our tourism will in fact go down. It's a fact. Barry Bard, El Gato Tool, said the other day, he'd rather pay another 2 cents on his cup of coffee than lose his business, because he knows a lot of his business depends on tourism.
The other side sounds like The Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore. And that number up there, 61%, is on Visas and MasterCards. Who buys their RV with the MasterCard or Visa? Not a $300,000. There may be people that can, I guess. Who in here has bought their car or RV on a Visa? Okay, there you go. 3. Yeah. How many transactions happen in Prescott with cash? Lots. So this number here is skewed when they say 61% and they base it on credit cards.
So keep in mind, there's a lot of more transactions that go out there in the form of loans or a variety of things. This number is not real.
You know, folks, Chris mentioned one of the communities down in the valley at 6-point-something%. I have to tell you, we have to reduce our taxes by a whole lot in order to get down to 6%.
Amen, brother.
It is at 8.35% right now, only 2% of that is Prescott. If we add another 3/4 of a penny, that's going to be 9.1%. They're not saying, well, it's so far above 6% that we can't go to Prescott anymore. Let's get real.
You're coming up here, we're gonna wait 110 degrees. Come on, give me a break.
Keep in mind, next year or the year after, Governor Ducey reneged on his tax increase. And he's probably gonna take Prop 301.6 and move it up to 1%, or 1%. So you're gonna be faced with the 9.5. Arizona's already the 11th highest in sales tax in the nation. So keep in mind, as we keep cranking this up and using sales tax, we become less attractive.
Let's lower the sales tax a little bit, and let them sell twice as many. How about that for a plan?
Let's get back to the Q&A.
Yeah.
Thank you. I heard the word dedicated used several times in your presentation. By the way, your presentation was excellent.
Thank you.
Let's assume for a moment, if I may, the 443 passes and the city council now has $10 million new dollars over and above what we have now. Okay? How much of that 10 or whatever it is would be dedicated to reducing the unfunded liability? 10, I've heard 7. What happened to the other 2.5?
No.
There's 8 million numbers flying around.
I know. That's why I kind of restated. By the way, you guys sound a little bit like Saul Alinsky with the confusing and not telling the truth. We're telling the truth here. One of the things, the 3/4% will generate $11 million of that. 10 to 12, so let's say 11. That entire amount of money is dedicated, must go to pay down the unfunded liability. That's a have to. To that, we will add as much as we can from the general fund. Right now, this city council has said that we will put another $7.8 million in addition to the 11 if 443 passes. Does that make that clear?
If what you said, if I understand what you said, be it 10, 11, or 12.
Right. That all goes, every dime.
Every dime of it.
Every
goes to
dime.
Unfunded, the one.
Absolutely. Every dime
Plus
will
what's
go.
going in current.
Well, yeah, that 11 million that's generated by the tax will go in. Our council this year has said they would like to also add another 7.8 million to that, which would be right at $19 million. Our council cannot tie the hands of future councils. So, future councils, that's what I said. Make sure you put people on the city council that are going to be devoted to paying down this unfunded liability. One other thing, you were talking, Chris, about our city. We've reduced staff from 570 employees in the city of Prescott to 494. It's one of the things I failed to mention, so I think that that's part of the solution as well.
I got a question for you.
But before we walk away on that, Billy, how much of that staff reduction happened while you were on city council?
Well, it was pretty low when I got there.
Yeah, it was pretty low when you got there. And it was really dumped hard before I even got there.
I know.
So most of those drops. When I was on council, we were right around 500 people.
But my point is, the economy's improved and we have not added staff.
Right, great. And you know what, we need more police and fire because okay, you know what, you guys, let's make this really personal, okay? In 2002, you were 100% funded on your pension, and I'm your investment guy. And you know what? 14 years goes by, 15 years, whatever goes by, you come to me and you say, you know what, Chris? I'm ready to go fishing. I'm ready to go in retirement. And you know what I say? Don't buy the worms yet, because your retirement is now only 24% funded. But I tell you what, I have an idea. Give me more than twice as much money as you used to. I've made some changes. I got some ideas. Trust me, I'll fix it. How many people would take that deal? That's exactly what we're facing here.
No, you're saying we have the option. We don't have the option. We have to pay it. Constitution,
And just
mandated.
to go into, when we talked about staffing levels, now true, we have a fire department. We have an airport. We have a staffing level of 494, I think she said. Prescott Valley has a bigger population than us, and they have half the staff. They're sitting right around 200. Just a thought.
I'd like to see one of your other charts. You guys were talking about some things earlier, and I think you kind of get your cart before the horse. You got to brag about the parks and the library, and the police and the fire department are on the bottom part of that chart. Now, the people can go out to the parks while their house is burning down because the fire department can't get there. I think you need to get some of your priorities straightened out. You know, okay, so the library's closed one day a week. All right? So what? I want the firemen and the police to be available when we need them.
Absolutely. And public safety, sir, can I respond? Can I respond, please? Thank you. Public safety is number one in the city of Prescott. Absolutely number one. We'll change that slide. We'll put police and fire first. I think you're absolutely right, because that is our first priority. And you will see, if 443 doesn't pass, it won't be, you know, we may have to reduce some police and fire, but we're going to be cutting parks and recreations and libraries, that's for sure. Because we're going to keep what we have to keep for public safety. One of the things I wanted to mention, PD, somebody mentioned Paradise Valley, I think it was Chris, you mentioned, I'm sorry, Prescott Valley, the staff in Prescott Valley being lower. Prescott Valley does not have a fire department. A house valued at $200,000 in Prescott Valley pays $560 a year for that fire protection. A house in the city of Prescott pays $54 a year for fire protection. I think that says something about the city of Prescott and how lean we are.
Give them bells, Brett.
See, this is the problem. You know, this is the problem. Politicians move on.
We're gonna get a closing statement from this group, and we gotta wrap it up.
I just want to read something that I kind of wrote up for the last time when me and Steve were talking. Because I saw an ad come out for them that the yes folks that not passing this tax is kicking the can down the road. But I'd argue that passing the tax is kicking the can down the road. No government or agency will tackle anything this tough until it's at crisis level. We watched it grow until we had to start making cuts, close the library for a day, don't hire new people, run out of station. We are already asking a lot from our guys in the field. Now, pay attention to these numbers. Did you know in 1999, we had 199 active members and 55 retired. In 2016, we had actually gone down to 106 active members and 137 retired. Do you think Prescott grew a little bit over the past 17 years? You know, respect goes out to the rank and file that hung in there and did the job day after day. Why were we so better staffed in 99? Could one factor be that in 99 we had a fully funded pension? And last year we paid a bill for $6.5 million? Passing this tax feels like putting gas in a car you just wrecked. No matter how much gas you put into it, it ain't gonna run until you fix it. That's my feelings. We owe these guys a retirement. It's in the Constitution that we owe these guys a retirement. And from the studying that we did, it looks like we're going downhill really fast. And unless it's fixed at the state level, it ain't gonna be fixed at all. You know, maybe we'll have this little stopgap measure that'll help us out a little bit in the short term, but it doesn't look like it's gonna last even in the short term. You know, Prescott's gonna have to make a decision. Do you guys want to tax, or do you want us to make cuts? And it's gonna be hard. But you know what? I got a call from a guy, a councilman in Mesa. He saw the little video and he said, thank God somebody else gets it. There's other people around the state. We are in trouble around the state. Someone needs to gather the troops and demand action at the state level. The rank and file needs to turn around, police and fire, and say, we need real reform on a state level. We need to fix it. It's broke.
Well, we had a letter here from the mayor of Bisbee. He wrote it to his representatives. And he was lamenting that the city could no longer make its payments. And they were going under. And that the legislature down there was doing absolutely nothing. And you can take it to the bank. They're doing absolutely nothing down there. They're beholden to the unions and special interests. All you have to do is go out to the Secretary of State's site to see who donates to who. The mayor of Bisbee basically said, when they go down, the pensions for their people are still going to be paid. It's just that Prescott and other cities are going to be paying. So keep in mind that these debts don't go away. It's just, as he called, the last man standing is going to be paying the bill.
You know, folks, I like analogies. And the analogy I'm going to use is you have a nasty disease. And you go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you a treatment plan. And you say, no, doctor, until they find a cure for this disease, I'm not taking any treatment at all. And then, here comes a consultant into the room and he says, and by the way, you're going to have to die first in order for somebody to pay attention to you and the disease. You know what, folks? That's just not reality. No solution is not a solution. Waiting is not a solution. Can't never did anything. So let's get serious here, folks. Yes, on 443. Their cup is half empty. Our cup is 0.75% full.
Thank you, Steve. You know, Chris, I couldn't agree with you more. This problem definitely, this system needs to be fixed. It was set up wrong to begin with. One of the other reforms that's been done is that there is now pooling of it. There are 256 different entities that are in PSPRS. Now they are pooled. So now at least we share risk. That was done in the legislature this year. And thank you very much, Karen and David and Noah, because that's pretty major. We will pay this. It's what you want your city to look like in 2028, in 2038. Maybe some of you don't care. I care a lot. Is it worth 75 cents to me on $100? You bet it is. You bet it is. I've had people say, Billy, why didn't you go to 1 cent? Because we believe 3/4 cent can help us pay down this unfunded liability. We're not saying it's going to be paid off, it will be paid down to where it is manageable. We ask you to really study the facts. There's a lot of misinformation that's being given out there. In the city of Prescott, we can't control what CAFMA does, we can't control what the county does, but we know what's best for Prescott. I hope that when you vote for candidates, you will ask them where they stand on this issue, and know passing this 443 is what needs to be done for our city. Thank you very much.
I want to thank both sides for a good presentation. And now here's for the draw. How much money we got, Rick? For $78.
That won't pay down the debt.